been in St. Pat's recently, but there's a fair amount of signage with regards to some of the stuff that they're doing, which is really interesting. They've switched to, they're testing LED lighting in their building right now, which is ultra efficient. They've also switched all of their fluorescents to the most efficient varieties. And they instituted a recycling program. Their goal was 10%. They are now up to 20% in their first year, so they exceeded their goal in the first year. They've been collecting thermometers in case if you needed help with your mercury thermometers. And with regards to that, they got an award for making medicine mercury-free. So I assume that's not only your collection process, but also in your own procedures. They also received an Energy Star Award for energy management and the Governor's Eco Star Award. So we're just kind of adding on to all of the things that they're already doing. But we really wanted to highlight them as one of the real movers in this area. And so Beth,
thank you very much.
Very much. Thank you. Our next category is the Sustainable New Venture of the Year, and we do a variety of different things with this particular award. And we don't require that it be in your first year. It can be in your first year, your second year of operation. It can be a whole new business, or it can be a new product line in the business. Last year we chose the two, our first two. I know one of them's LEED. I actually don't know if both of them ended up with LEED. But our first two buildings that were going for LEED certification in Missoula, the First Interstate building and the Missoula Federal Credit Union building. I know the credit union did get their LEED certification just recently. Platinum, yeah, so they're at the highest level. I don't know what First Interstate was doing. The whole process that they were going through last year, even though they weren't already certified, they were making such huge strides that we gave those two buildings the New Venture of the Year. This year we have a really interesting project going on in Missoula that we're all really excited about. So it's a new product line, basically, for two entities. North Slope Sustainable Wood and Clausen Windows. You may have seen the article in the Missoulian. They are now taking restoration larch, and it will be going into some window frames for Clausen Windows, which is a new and unique way to use the restoration larch that North Slope Sustainable Wood puts together. So Whitney Schwab will be accepting for accepting for Clausen Windows. And here's one for you guys. And one for you guys. Both of these two entities are locally owned businesses that have been active in the community. North Slope is fairly new. Clausen, on the other hand, has been in Missoula for a long time, doing a lot of stuff in Missoula, and it's a real cool partnership, and they'll tell you a little bit more about that later. So I won't spoil it more. But again, when we looked at the two entities together and all the stuff that they do in the community, we were just really impressed.
Thank you.
Thank you, ladies. I think I forgot to introduce myself. I'm Sue Anderson, one of the board members, chair of the Ed Committee. I'm going to bring Lisa up to do the last couple awards. So,
thanks.
This is Lisa Swallow.
So the next award that we want to hand out is for Sustainable Advocate of the Year, and of course we had to narrow this down from a wide pool of folks, and we still ended up with two that had to share this award. I would like to bring up my good friend Phil Condon from the Sustainable Campus Committee. Has done a pivotal motivator at the University of Montana. He's really helped integrate sustainability there. He mentored a graduate student named Jessie Davies, who has since moved to Tanzania, I believe. She's in Arusha as we speak, working on climate change and its impact on rural women. But the reason that Phil and Jessie were nominated among many things that they've done is that they produced this really pretty amazing document, which is the first greenhouse gas inventory It's one of the first 100 greenhouse gas inventories in the nation, comprehensive greenhouse gas inventories, that talks about how many tons of carbon and greenhouse gases we emit a year. The athletic department's not actually in here, so it looks really good. Phil has just been a very motivational force for a lot of graduate students, undergrad students. He's an EDST prof. He's very active on the Sustainable Campus Committee. He co-chaired it for many years. He inspired Jessie and mentored Jessie in her work. And gosh, he's just done a lot. Yeah.
Her folks are in Maine. So.
There you go.
I should just say that Jessie Davy actually did 90% of the work on the greenhouse gas inventory. We met weekly. I just kind of was her sounding board, and she was new to the campus, so steered her through. But she and interns that she had worked for did all the work.
And I guess part of building on what an accomplishment that was is once you've measured your baseline, you can start to reduce. And so once you know where you're at, you're on the path to some sort of reduction, some sort of carbon neutrality plan. And that's huge for the University of Montana because obviously we're a key player in this community, both from an emitting standpoint and an economic standpoint. So thank you very much. And the last award we want to present tonight is for the SBC Volunteer of the Year Award. And this is also a great friend of mine, John Keenan. So I've known John for probably 6 or 7 years, and I approached him a couple years ago and said, would you like to sit on the SBC board? And he said, well, I'll think about it, and we went back and forth with it. And so I'm ready for a little bit of an epiphany in my life. Maybe I'm going to get that from this board. And I said, I bet you will. So he joins the board and manages to not be one of those people that just shows up to a monthly board meeting, but he rolls up his sleeves and he digs in and says, where can I use my skill set and how can I further the mission of this organization? He's the first person to say he doesn't have some extensive background in sustainability, but how can I work on behalf of the mission of the organization? The first thing that he rolled out that most of you would be conversant with is the Buy Local campaign. That was a year ago last fall? Last spring. And we brought on local sponsors, local activities, all sorts of campaigns, billboards, the holiday Buy Local campaign. And people started really kind of talking the talk, how are we going to bring our conversation back to purchasing from local vendors, or at least thinking about that as your first purchasing choice. Well, on the heels of that, which took unbelievable amounts of time and energy, we come out of the holiday campaign and said, I think we need to have a local fest this spring, which, as many of you know, turned into Local Week. I mean, if you're alive and have a radio or a TV or an internet connection, you heard about Local Fest and Local Week. That's John. I mean, it was a lot of people. It was a lot of people, but you spearheaded it. And I have to say that he has done it all with such panache, and he's brought together players from the community that otherwise wouldn't talk to each other or be connected in any way. And I just think for that we all appreciate what you've done. No, you're not Jesse.
The folks who are going to speak today, a representative or two from each of the entities, to come on up, and we will form our sustainable business panel today to talk a little bit about how we do sustainable business in Missoula, what some of the challenges are, what some of the opportunities are, and everybody gets 5 to 10 minutes, and then we're going to open the floor to questions. So hopefully, the watch that I don't have is going to tell you when you've gone too long. So I don't know who from Clear Sky's coming up, but Beth, if you come up. All right, thank you all for joining us tonight. We wanted to try this year for the first time, turning our award winners into a sustainable business panel. They have a lot of experience in implementing sustainable practices and what the challenges and opportunities in the community are. We're basically going to go down the panel this way, so we'll start with Phil Condon from the University Sustainability Committee, and then we'll move on to Beth Schwenk from St. Pat's. Keegan Eichen, I never get it right.
That one.
That one. Keegan. We'll go with Keegan from Clear Sky Climate Solutions. Whitney Schwab from North Slope Sustainable Lumber. And Amy may or may not stay with us. We're hoping Bill Clausen will join us later. But Amy Clausen is sitting in, keeping the chair warm, and we'll say some things if Bill doesn't make it. So that's our panel. They're each going to take 5 or 10 minutes and describe what they've been up to in their businesses, and then we'll open it up to questions. So think of some good, tough questions for them. Bill, go ahead.
Okay, well, I don't have anything prepared, but I'll just think of a few things just to give you a sense if you're not familiar with what the university's been doing. Since about 2002, the president signed the Talawar Declaration and created a committee, at least, that was broadly based in administration, faculty, students, and staff as representatives from each area to begin to talk about sustainability on the campus, both in terms of operations and effect of a huge entity like the university, a small little town in itself, and also, of course, the special role that the university has educationally in all areas, but in this area particularly. Then and I came on that committee 2 years later, and I chaired it for a couple of years, and we began recommending for we began to see that, wow, this job is, the more you find out about it, the more there is to do, and we quickly realized we needed paid, permanent, full-time people, and began advocating for a sustainability coordinator. That took about 4 years and meant a fair amount of resistance, but we do have, as of last January now, we have a permanent full-time position at the campus, a very accomplished woman named Sherry Peacock. So I'm sure people, as you're dealing with the university now in areas of sustainability and carbon inventory and energy use, Sherry Peacock will be somebody people will be getting to know, and seems to me to be a really great addition to the campus. So that was one of our main, really it took years to kind of keep lobbying for that, and the president has always been supportive, but he's also put it back on us to, well, show me more support, show me broader support from students, so forth. That's another thing, students became very active in this, and a name that deserves a lot of credit in addition to people on our committee like Lisa, but was the Associated Students president of last year, Dustin Leftridge, who made it his kind of focus, he and his vice president of their campaign, heading the student body, sustainability, and he really took that to the administration, and he collaborated with our committee a lot and helped move it forward. He helped get Jesse Davies' position, who was the co-winner of this Advocate Award, working for Associated Students as the sustainability coordinator. And then she, because she had experience partly from New Hampshire, working on the calculator for greenhouse gas emissions, Clean Air, Cool Planet, she became the person really running our first inventory, which took most of last academic year to get done. And just a couple things about the inventory, and then, I'm happy to answer questions to the extent that I know them. But the absolute numbers may not mean too much. Right now we estimate, and we know that the first inventory wasn't necessarily 100% accurate. In fact, we know that it's probably off quite a bit, but it's still a really invaluable first baseline. And what Jesse and other people working on the report did, every time they realized there was a place that they couldn't capture all the data, or the places that they just had to skip because for all sorts of administrative reasons, and they noted that, so that we're going to be doing an inventory every 2 years on campus. In fact, our agreement with the college and university president's climate commitment that President Dennison, to his credit, signed 2 years ago. He signed onto it, one of the first 100 schools. Now there's 680 or something. But anyway, so we noted that in this inventory every place, so that each time we do an inventory every other year, it should get more accurate and more comprehensive and more complete. But the absolute numbers, you know, so in 2007, our estimate was 42,000 metric tons of carbon dioxide. So that isn't so interesting, but we were also able to estimate that we'd increased by 16% since the year 2000. And we could see that student body enrollment hadn't increased that much. We weren't sure about square footage on campus. So these are the kind of things we have to think about, particularly as we go forward, trying to figure out, and to me the big, and I guess it's no different at than it is at Missoula or in anybody's business or globally, how are we going to grow, or are we going to grow in any way at the same time that we're trying to go in the opposite direction in terms of carbon emissions? And I've tried to keep raising that to the forefront, and I know the committee now and Sherry Peacock are still, are just on the edge of really beginning to wrestle with this question. If we're going to add more students, or if we're going to add more employees, staff and faculty, or if we're going to add more square footage on campus that requires energy, how are we going to do that over the next 2, 5, 10, 40 years? At the same time, our stated goal is for that metric tons of carbon dioxide emissions to go steadily down, with the ultimate goal being 0. Well, it's going to be a big challenge, and nobody has the answer yet. But this year we're working on a comprehensive action plan to begin to set the first goals, and that'll keep getting refined too, year by year. But I think that it would be easier to comprehend and deal with if we were imagining it in a static situation. Okay, well, we're not going to add any more square footage or any more employees or any more students, and we're going to go down. That would be already a good challenge, but no one's agreed to that, and no one's even proposed that necessarily. The question is, how are we going to incorporate both, or can we? And I'm not sure. I certainly don't have that answer, but that's something that we're wrestling with. And then there's just one other interesting factor that I'll throw out about the greenhouse gas inventory. The 3 big sources on campus are basically heating buildings from burning natural gas on campus, our electricity usage purchased from Northwest, and then our transportation that includes commuting. Those are just about, I think, given the level of accuracy, you could almost say 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. Well, the electricity comes out that way. However, it's a bit misleading in terms of our actual energy usage, kilowatt hours and so forth, because we get almost a 0.5 discount because supposedly our electricity here is coming, we get a coefficient factor from Northwest because such a high percentage is coming from hydro, as opposed, so if were in Pennsylvania, same school doing the same exact stuff, burning this, using the same amount of electricity on campus, the carbon emissions that we would calculate and say we're responsible for would be probably at least 75% higher. But because, and to me that's a little problematic because the nationwide grid is, a nationwide grid, and it's a little hard to say. But anyway, we've been pointing that out to the administration and to the operations people too. This may look real good on paper right now compared to schools in the east or the south for our electricity usage and its carbon footprint. However, we're still using a lot of electricity, and we're not 100% sure of where it really comes from. So anyway, that's plenty for me. That's the kind of things we've been dealing with for the last couple of years, and we'll be dealing with for the next 40.
Is that all?
Do you want questions now or to keep moving
No, let's
down?
go ahead and go through all of you.
Okay.
Yeah, so go ahead, Beth. Sorry.
Thank you. Well, I'm Beth Shank from St. Catherine. Thanks again for this award. And I want to just provide a little bit of history and context, I guess, in terms of healthcare and sustainability. My particular focus has been on the environment. St. Pat's is also very involved in social and economic sustainability in different ways. As you know, a major employer, a huge economic force. Operating costs are about $430,000 a day when we're moving fast, when we have a lot of patients. And it's a big entity, 1 million square feet in all our buildings. So my focus really has been on helping move environmental sustainability forward. The people who do that work in terms of energy are our facility staff. They've done a great job. Tom Schuessler was a co-designate here tonight. I just want to mention his name. He's led us through years of efficiencies. But to just paint the picture about healthcare and why it matters and why environmental impacts are a big deal. Healthcare is the second largest user of energy in the nation, second to food. Food being production, delivery, cooking, packaging, et cetera. And healthcare, when I speak of it, is also everything. Pharmaceutical development, hospitals, doctor's offices, buying Advil at Walmart, et cetera. The whole thing that would go into the big bucket, healthcare is the second largest energy user. And do you have an idea of healthcare? Hospitals themselves are also the second highest energy users per square foot. Do you know what first is?
Buildings.
Huh?
Isn't it buildings?
Well, of buildings.
Oh.
Per square foot.
Tanning salon.
Good vote, but it's, that was said, it's actually convenience stores because it's a jam-packed in with refrigerators, heaters, little coffee
Ice
pots.
factories, yeah.
And hospitals are a bit like that. We're so dependent on our machinery, our electricity. It runs 24/7. We have backup generators. We have to have power. You know, we have life support machinery on our electricity. So we have our entire generator. We have a power plant of our own. And so it's a very complicated world in which to save energy. However, it can be done, and it is being done. So nationally, it's a problem. Historically, it's a problem. The way I organize it and my way of thinking is in 3 categories: energy, waste, and toxins. Energy, we've talked a little bit about. Waste is overwhelming. I mean, as you know about the disposables in healthcare, the amount that we just go through, generally speaking, I don't have the numbers right off my head, but we at St. Pat's use something like 37,000 sheets of paper a day. You know, it's just phenomenal numbers. And we're a small hospital. We're 247 beds. You know, many hospitals are huge in cities and elsewhere. But the amount of waste is overwhelming. The complexity of waste is overwhelming. There's regular waste, there's nuclear waste, there's infectious waste, there's hazardous waste, there's anesthesia gases, which are their own category because they're incredible greenhouse gases. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's very complicated managing the waste facilities at a hospital. And then the third is toxins. And I want to just speak to toxins because of some things that have happened partly around toxins. The one you may know the most about is mercury. So mercury over time, it's a neurotoxin, a powerful neurotoxin. It's damaging to all of us. That's why we have to limit our fish intake, especially women of childbearing age and children. And part of that, a disproportionate amount of that came from healthcare, and that was through thermometers and sphygmomanometers. So in the mid-90s, that became well known through an EPA study. And several groups were formed that started to really work on that. One of those is called Healthcare Without Harm. It's a fantastic organization if you have the desire to learn more about it. We've been a member of that since 2000. And they have worked on just lots of topics, but one is mercury, to get that out of our waste stream. And for the most part, that's no longer a huge issue in healthcare. I mean, it is. I shouldn't say that because many places aren't dealing with it, but there are great alternatives that are affordable. Key word, you know, we have to have kind of net costs. Another one is dioxins, which is plastics. And so plastics are abundantly used in healthcare. When they're created and when they're burned, they release dioxins, which are carcinogen. And so this group also looked at incinerators. Medical incinerators were a big problem. There were 5,000 15 years ago, and now there are about 100 in the nation. There's only one in Montana. It's down the road from us at Hamilton. And Women's Voices for the Earth reached an agreement with them that they would really try to only burn the pathogens. You do need incineration for some things. So anyway, I wanted to just give that context about why healthcare and the environment overlap in such a big way. And also, healthcare, as you know, is huge. It's right now 16 to 17% of our GDP, thought to be 20% by 2015. 1 in 8, I just learned this week, 1 in 8 Americans work in healthcare. So it is, you know, it's huge, it's impactful, it's going to change, we hope, but these problems are not going to change overnight. They're not probably going to change, you know, in 10 years, yet people are working on them. I'm a little bit tired today, only because I just flew in from Chicago because I was at a Clean Med Conference. This is a great conference, nationwide conference, where there's lots of really smart people working on these really complicated problems in terms of environment, particularly, and healthcare. So I'm full of ideas.
Clean Med?
Clean Med. But now back to Missoula. I want to tell you a little bit about what St. Pat's has been doing. We really have had a pretty proactive facilities crew who's worked on energy savings for a long time. Why? Because it saves money, right? Tie energy to money, that's where business can really grab onto this. We've had well water cooling since 1992. That means we pump water out of the ground at 48 degrees. It goes up to our chillers to chill the building, goes back in at 60 degrees. So in the summer, that's thought to save 90% of our electricity needs. We also have chillers that kind of do the reverse in the winter. Hospitals, HVAC systems in hospitals are kind of mind-blowing. We have all these rules, like there have to be air exchanges in patient rooms 4 times per hour, as long when the patient is there. Our building is not sophisticated enough that you know when a patient is there or not, so it just exchanges the air 4 times an hour no matter what. In the operating rooms, it's 11 times an hour. So it's just amazing amounts of energy are required. Also, we heat the building in the winter, and we have to air condition the OR, the cath labs, the data center. And so we do this heating and reheating thing all the time. So we've installed these chillers that allow us to, when the temperature's below 30, to bring the air in straight from the outside. Not straight, it goes through a lot of steps. But that is thought to save about 95% on that re-chilling effort. As I mentioned, we've switched out light bulbs and we have a list of things that are about, 10 or 12 significant things that have led us to win the Energy Star Award for the last few years. The Energy Star Award in energy management, it's a way to scale your buildings and operations, and you end up with a point score. And that's great. It's great to be motivated by that. It's great to be able to do those things. It's great to measure ourselves by that. So anyway, that's a little bit of what we've done with energy. With waste, as we talked about, we've really worked harder on managing our waste and decreasing what goes into the landfill. We don't incinerate. It's a challenge in Missoula. You all know recycling is a challenge in Missoula. You know, there are many cities that do your recycling for you. You're incentivized to do it. They have mandates to recycle 40% or more. You can sell any product you want, all 7 plastics, glass, anything. So we know that even though there are a lot of very dedicated people to recycling, it is hard to do here. I know of hospitals that are able to recycle 50% of their waste. I'm 60%, and I'm jealous. We've worked really hard, and we're at 20, which I'm proud of. But there's a lot to be done. There's a lot to be done segregating hazardous waste properly. Pharmaceutical waste disposal is a big, complicated mess. I was just at several of the breakout sessions at Clean Med. We're on that, and oh boy, do we need some work. And that's nationwide, and I'm looking forward to some better solutions. And then the last area that I just will address for us is toxins, and like we said before, we've gone through an extensive cataloging of all of our different mercury sources and have eliminated about 90%. They can't all be eliminated, but those that have viable alternatives can, and we're working on that. We've switched out all of our IV tubing from PVC with DEHP, which is a softening agent, which is also a carcinogen, to PVC-free. We have other things that we've done, and I have a list, but like you, I don't have that in front of me, so it's hard to remember. But I would just like to say that I'm speaking to the. I don't need to tell you this, but a healthy environment is so intricately linked to our health, and hospitals, I totally believe, need to take a lead in that. I'm happy that St. Pat's is doing what it can. We have the same challenges that everyone does, especially with this time of a tough economy. I think that we're guided heavily by our mission and heavily by for instance, our core value of stewardship says that we strive to care wisely for our resources, our people, and our earth. I mean, it says it right there. That gives us credibility internally. That gives us the ability to say, wait a minute, remember this. Also, our overall mission statement is that this is not verbatim, but we are people of providence, demonstrating God's love through our care of others, especially the poor and the vulnerable. And one thing that I've been linking a lot is that the earth is vulnerable. And so that's part of our job now, too. So anyway, that's kind of what we've been up to. And thank you for listening.
My name's Keegan Eisenstadt. I work at Clear Sky Climate Solutions with some of my esteemed colleagues who are here as well. It's an honor to be here to receive the award from the SBC and to sit at the panel listening to main movers in our small birds economy. Also feeling that the earth is vulnerable. Indeed, I think that is one of the main missions that is driving our company's vision of what it is that we're trying to achieve. The essence really of Clear Sky Climate Solutions is that we want to be stewards of the atmosphere. In a time when, as Phil was talking about, the university's growing, we're not in a static environment, how are we going to make these reductions that we've claimed we're going to make by our president signing a piece of paper along with all the other presidents of universities, but our vision is growth, right? That's sort of the fundamental trauma of our vision of economy and society is growth is good, right? So more growth is better. It's more money in our cash box. It's better returns. We got to keep growing. The economy's awful. We're in a recession. We're going to stop all non-essential, non-core function spending, which is like swapping out our tubing or changing light bulbs or what have you. So the planet is growing. We moved over 6 billion people last year, projected to, I think, 8 by 2050. I don't know where 8 billion of us are going to fit. But I also don't know where we're going to be reducing greenhouse gas emissions as a planet as our species continues to multiply in this way. So Clear Sky Climate Solutions is sort of an atmospheric point of view. We're looking down on planet Earth and trying to figure out what is it that humans are doing? How are we going to try to fix this? How are we going to solve it? The amount, greenhouse gases in general, we should just think about them. They're our friends, really. Right? If we didn't have any, the average surface temp on the Earth would be about minus 15 degrees centigrade. So we like it. We like our position relative to the sun. We like our mass. It's attracted a nice thick atmosphere. We like our 0.03% of our atmosphere that's CO2. That's great for us. But you add more, and all of a sudden this wonderful balance that's really good for our species and that we've evolved to live in changes dramatically. About 60 years ago, and just after World War II, when real, tangible, direct monitoring of CO2 in the atmosphere started taking place, there were about 330 parts per million, and in February of this year, I think we were at 387 parts per million CO2 in the atmosphere. So that's 50 years. That's a relatively big jump. It's got everybody worried. It's interesting that we're in our small little town. It's true, we're 0.1% of our society in Missoula, but we're all talking climate change. That's pretty cool. I hope that's happening all over the world, because now's the time. Waxman Markey cap and trade bills in the Senate, not yet the House, but anyway, this is a very timely thing to be doing, and I'm fortunate to be joined with some colleagues that are vanguard. They're really leading the edge in what's cool and what's hip. So I'm kind of following along. Mike and Stephen and I do principally 3 things. We design projects around the world that generate certified high-quality carbon offsets. It's sort of a strange idea. The second thing we do is we help institutions, entities, companies, individuals, households do inventories. Okay? The rigor with which John needs to monitor his household or his local fest. We recently offset local fest last weekend. We did an inventory, significantly less formal than this because the number of variables were smaller, but nevertheless, a rigorous inventory of the amount of greenhouse gases that went into making local fest. If you don't measure, you don't know where you're starting. So sort of the motto around our outreach to companies, which is the second phase of Clear Sky Climate Solutions, is measure. Once you measure, you can think about reducing, and once you reduce as much as you can offset what's left, which will bring the U back to 0. But the U has to go to 0 by helping, I think, do everything they can, generate their own power or invest in power generation, which is something I haven't heard anybody there talking about, but I've been pushing. And third, invest in offset activities with good projects around the world. From the point of view of the atmosphere, if I'm the atmosphere, I don't care where the carbon offsets come from. Really, The atmosphere is mixed around the globe in about 7 or 8 days, which is why you can't get a 10-day forecast that's worth anything. Right? 7 days, people. 7 days is pretty good. Beyond that, every molecule in the atmosphere has moved through the stratosphere and is mixed. You don't really know what's going to happen. So if I'm the atmosphere and somebody in Panama is doing something that pulls CO2 out of the air, and I'm the U and I've reduced all I can, or I'm the hospital and I want to do something interesting that's part of my community as well as do everything internally, there are offsets that can be added to your program. The other beautiful piece of that is that we get, some money from the U and we start investing it in social activities in the developing world, and we start having a double impact. All of a sudden, we're getting more sustainable and taking account of our climate change waste. Really, greenhouse gases, Mike has simplified this for me lately. Greenhouse gas is garbage. It's garbage from human activities. And just like you pay the BFI to come to your house weekly, take your garbage out, you just put it to the curb. You don't really know what happens to it. You pay a bill. Allied Waste or whoever it is. Clear Sky Climate Solutions is the garbage man of the atmosphere. We take your greenhouse gas emissions from flying to Chicago, doing your thing, or heating your new building expansion at the U or what have you, and we take that funds and we invest it around the world in projects that are doing positive, sustainable things, certainly from the point of view of the atmosphere, typically from the point of view of local society, and certainly from the point of view of distribution of wealth and economy, which is typically developed to developing world, but not always. The third piece of our puzzle, so we design projects around the world. I'll mention a couple in a minute that are local. We work with institutions doing greenhouse gas assessments. There's a carbon calculator on our website. If you want to go play, just check out your own footprint. It's at clearskyclimatesolutions.com and click on calculate your footprint. I think that's the link, something like that. The third piece is brokerage of credits. So we are in part a commodities brokerage house. The certified carbon credits, once they're created, are third-party certified. They get a unique serial number. They're put up on a trading platform or in a database from whence they get traded off when somebody buys them. So at that point, they are, according to the lingo of the carbon market, they're retired. That's when the mother atmosphere receives her benefit from all of this energy of human endeavor to try to create a carbon marketplace. 2 projects that we're involved with at the moment that are in Montana. And one I think many of you will know, because I am speaking to the choir a little bit here, but we just found out or received approval to work on creating a carbon credit project at Hull's Dairy down in the Bitterroot. They are in Corvallis. Anybody show of hands? Anybody know Hull's Dairy? All right, a couple. Hull's Dairy, I think actually through MCDC's benefit, and Kaya would be happy to answer all the MCDC questions, and where the orange dots are all around town. They anaerobically digest manure from their dairy cows. So they milked this morning 378 cows, and all the poo that comes out of their cows, all the ladies as they cruise to the milker and cruise back and live in the barn, gets collected, put in big tanks, digested with bacteria. That digestion process kicks out methane. The methane's captured and burned as fuel, turns a generator, creates all the power for the dairy, creates excess heat that's then used in the dairy to feed the microbes in the digesters. They have to be kept at about between 100 and 105 degrees. The solids that come out of the digester is basically the straw the cows ate. That straw's been broken down a little bit, but it's sanitary. It goes back in as bedding for the cows. The bedding makes about 3 rounds through the digester, and then it becomes bagged compost that the dairy sells for landscaping in your garden. The fourth product that comes out is nutrient-rich water. This is similar to the stuff that used to sit in your sewage lagoons if you're an animal feedlot, except it's just the water with nutrients, no pathogen load because they were cooked out in the digester. It now goes by gravity as part of a sprinkler system, gravity-fed sprinkler system, to grow the hay that feeds the cows in the dairy. That's one type of cool local project. We don't take credit for how cool that is. We just take credit for being able to return enough money from the creation of carbon credits from that project to almost pay the debt burden they have for building it. exclusive of all the money that was given to them to build this pilot project. But very cool thing. Another piece of the puzzle, and just so you know, we're going to be creating carbon credits from that are going to be registered on the California Climate Action Registry. Zagavaneta and company have created a new regulatory market in California, which looks, I would say, likely to be akin to what U.S. cap and trade will look like. So this is sort of our pilot experience with what I think nationally is going to be happening. Very cool. A second Montana project is with an aggregated pool of large ranchers in eastern Montana. It's 3 counties in the southeast, and I think it's Yellowstone, Custer, and one other. 9 ranches. How big's the surface area, Stephen?
70,000 acres.
70,000 acres, and basically they've enforced grazing practices that require that the cows are penned instead of open in their land, and that they're rotated more frequently than they are under normal status conditions. They're moved from pen to pen, and they never get to repeat the same period of the year in the same pen. So whatever soil seed bank you have and native plants that happen to germinate in whatever week, that week, some year, they're going to be available to germinate, right? They're also required to move while there's still standing vegetative biomass on the soil. So as you can imagine, it's a small amount of carbon that's sequestered in the soil through this vegetation that's left and not eaten by the cows. And there's also a bunch of environmental benefits by not grazing the same place at the same time every year. So those are 2 sort of Montana things. We sold Montana rangeland credits to Jesse Davey, who offset the last men's Grizz basketball game against Boise State. It was Boise or Idaho State. I don't remember who came. And so we measured the footprint of the bus coming from, round trip from Idaho, and we measured the footprint of the energy use at the Adams Center during a basketball game in, I think it was March, which meant heating. And then we also measured practice time of the UM team in the gym to prepare for the week. So, I mean, again, these are just parts of sort of inventories that led us to work on the green game. So lots of things going on. We're proud to be represented in the SBC and to have sort of helped them think about, or help learn as well as help them think about how climate change fits into greater sustainability issues. And I'm honored to sit on the panel with them and look forward to your questions. Thanks.
My name is Whitney Schwab, and boy, I have some tough acts to follow. Nervous chuckle. No. And the company that I work primarily with is called North Slope Sustainable Wood. And I'm going to share a little bit about what we do, and I'm actually going to tie it into some efforts on campus and also some efforts on reducing our carbon footprint, and then share about how we came to partner with another local company with whom we share a lot of the same values and efforts on. And I see Bill Clausen walking through the door right now. Perfect timing. Come on up, Bill. And so while Bill makes his way up and grabs a seat, he'll get to hear my introduction on talking about what the work that North Slope does and how we came to partner with Clausen Windows, at which point I'll turn it over to Bill so he can share a little bit about his company and history and background. And just to put it into perspective, we both had like you coming in from Chicago, we were up north in the Flathead today, and boy howdy, it is construction season. So we had a little bit different schedules, but both ended up sitting in a lot of traffic to get here. So I'm really thrilled that Bill was able to make it in time for the panel discussion. Anyway, North Slope Sustainable Wood has been around for about 5 or 6 years, and we are a company that was started by a couple of folks, and our current remaining founding partners are Peter Stark, who is an outdoor adventure writer by profession, and Matt Arno, who is a restoration forester here in town, who has a company called Woodland Restoration that does restoration forestry work. Our origin story is kind of fun, so I'll share it briefly. Peter, who, as I said, is an outdoor adventure writer, and I'll use his words to tell this story because I guarantee you he would share it in this way. About I don't know, 6 or 7 years ago, as he puts it, I wrote a book that finally got me some credit and made a little bit of money. And so I asked Amy, my wife, a professional modern dancer, what I could do to reduce stress in her life. And she said, let's build a dance studio in the backyard. Because Amy, who's been a dance professor at the university for about 20 years, and as I said before, a modern professional dancer, would be, going all over town to all these various rehearsals, and to streamline it and put it into their backyard just seemed like a great way to make things better for their quality of life. So they did. So they built a dance studio in their backyard. Well, right about the same time, some land that they have up Sawmill Gulch, and a lot of you probably have seen this plot of land actually. It's right on the way up Sawmill Gulch, and there's some signage on there that says private property, forest restoration area. And it's on the way to where it opens up into the big meadow, and there's actually a public lands restoration project that we worked on last summer that I'll get to a little bit further in the story that's adjacent to it. Well, Peter, who is a self-described eco-liberal tree hugger from way back, bought this forest going, I'm gonna save it, it's gonna be great. Well, he took a course in forestry management to understand how to better manage his land, and what he realized is he had a very sick forest. A lot of small diameter trees overcrowding the bigger trees that were there, and for the most part just choking out each other, so they might be 100-year-old trees that are only 6 inches in diameter with really tight growth rings that were just out competing each other for resources and stunted and not able to go anywhere. Well, that's bad for the trees, but it's also bad for us as people, particularly that close to the wildland-urban interface where the forest meets the city, because of all the experiences we have almost every summer with bad wildfires and smoke. So there's a whole variety of reasons why doing forest restoration work is really valuable. And what forest restoration work is thinning out those overcrowded small diameter trees and leaving the old growth trees to thrive, so that the forest health is improved and the wildfire potential is reduced. And the general ecosystem is put back in a place of management for health. The reason why this happens is a couple of reasons, and this is an extremely simplified version of forest restoration and forestry in general. Two main reasons that contribute to a lot of these overcrowded forests. One, about 100 years ago, we had a lot of lands that were clear-cut. So you end up having trees growing back at the same rate without a difference in crown variance to help just naturally weed out what grows where. If you have a big tree that's shading a lot of the seedlings, they may not all survive. Well, when they're all reaching for the sun together with trying to get the same resources, they're growing at the same rate, which causes a lot of skinny trees to grow close together and not be able to grow out because they're so dense. The other thing that happened right about the same time was that we had Smokey the Bear come out and say, hey, put the fire out. We've got to do fire suppression. And so, as a management strategy, we did that for, essentially the past 100 years, except in the past 20 years or 30 years, we've gone, oh wait, maybe low impact burns on the landscape are valuable. We've since discovered that it actually is necessary in a low impact way, or a low intensity burn way, rather, to help seed pods open, to help weed out the garden, so to speak. So because of clear cuts and a lack of natural fire on the landscape, and probably a variety of other reasons too, but those are the two big things you can point a finger at, we end up with some really unhealthy forests. So back to Peter and his forest, he's making this discovery, and so he's going, wow, okay, so I've got to manage this now and thin it out. And he hired this restoration forester that I mentioned, Matt Arno, to come and thin his property. And as they were harvesting these logs, at the same time, Amy, Peter's wife, is doing this research on what she wants to have her dance floor made out of. In the research that they did looking at various dance floor options, larch is actually a really great product for making a dance floor for the particular properties that you need for that. They also found that over in Europe, larch has been used for centuries. Traditionally Siberian larch and European larch in like the old churches. It was actually used to make Viking ships. It's a really dense, durable, fire and rot resistant wood that has really valuable properties to make high value wood products out of. So as it all came to a head, Peter said, well, I've got gobs of larch, and Amy said, well, I'd love to have a larch floor, and they milled it up, and put it into the dance studio. And subsequently, people got real curious about the work that they were doing. I mean, it seemed to make sense. Hey, we've got a lot of small diameter trees that need to be thinned out of the forest and need to be able to bridge the gap from being a commodity product or a waste product. Oftentimes you'll see slash piles that don't even make it out of thinning projects because it costs too much to transport them and make use of them. Well, if we can create a market demand for a high value use for those products, then that helps make it move forward in a way that's good for everybody, for the forest, for our local economy, and for businesses to thrive. So, and I don't know if anybody's noticed the timber industry lately, but it's probably a shift we should consider supporting more. And that's kind of the nutshell of what our company does. So anyway, back to the dance studio. It got built. It was hosted on the Sustainability Home Tour one year, which is a local home tour that Homeward puts on, as I'm sure most people here are familiar with. And people got curious about it and said, "Hey, could I get one of those floors? Can we make this happen?" And that's how the business was born. It simmered along for a couple of years, and the Forest Service actually has a really big interest in the work that we do as well, because they do see this opportunity. There's a lot of public lands here in Montana that need to have stewardship projects, which is a type of forest restoration work. These thinning projects happen, and this is where I'm going to bring Sawmill Gulch up again. And that is where we source a lot of our logs, are from these Forest Service stewardship projects that our forester is signed off on, meets the criteria for providing low impact forestry and doing restoration work, thinning out the small diameter trees. And so, as I said, the Forest Service was real interested in what we did, and they awarded our business a grant to get marketing going for this, to help drive creating a market niche for restoration lumber high value products. So we started as a flooring company, and then started making trim as well. And when we went to the governor's mansion in Helena about 2 years ago to accept our award from the Forest Service and also celebrate the installation of the flooring that the governor put into the main state reception room of the governor's mansion, which was a partnership project with North Slope and Tricon Timber out in St. Regis and a couple of other folks who were involved in the project. That's where Clausen came on the scene. We had a Clausen sales representative from Bozeman who came to our floor party, for lack of a better word, and he came up to us at North Slope and said, "Hey, this is really amazing what you're doing, and I'm with a company that has been around for about 50 years, and we are a Montana-made company, and heavy in the log home industry, and your product's beautiful. I mean, I really think that we should make a window out of it." And of course I said, "Hey, that we all said, hey, that sounds like a great idea," and then kind of went our separate ways for a little while, and then met back up and put together our partnership, which is what we've been awarded for tonight, the new venture award between Clausen and North Slope Sustainable Wood to make this window that I'm going to let Bill share about. But before I hand it over to Bill, I just want to kind of tie a thread between the common grounds that we're all working towards, and unfortunately we haven't had an impact in the healthcare realm yet, but we'll get there. But on the campus, we're currently working on a project that probably many of you are familiar with, the Native American Studies building, and there was actually a really large larch tree that had to come from that site. And so we harvested that tree and are milling it into the flooring that's going to go into the dance floor, which is a big focal piece of that building. And to kind of tie it into the work that Keegan does, it's inevitable that we as companies are going to be putting off-gassing and contributing greenhouse gases to the world. But one of the ways that we at North Slope and at Clausen feel that we can make a big impact is to keep things local in our community. And through harvesting the wood for that project locally, milling it locally, drying it locally, and molding it locally, we're saving our carbon footprint from having to have it come from elsewhere. So that was kind of a neat tie into what the work that we're all doing. But with that, I'd like to hand it over to Bill.
Thanks. I'm sorry that I was late. Seems like Whitney and I've been talking with a lot of different groups about our window and working on trying to spread the word and build some interest in it. And I always have to go second. And so well, no, because it makes sense that I would go second.
It's not
But the
'cause I'm
fact
a
is,
loudmouth.
my story isn't as interesting as hers. But Clausen Windows started just after World War II. My grandfather founded the company actually as a wood furniture manufacturing company. And at that time, our flagship product was a wood ironing board that was sold up and down the East Coast. So we've sort of evolved from there. We started doing wood windows in the 60s. We added a line of clad windows in the 80s when people found out they didn't like to paint the outside of their windows. And so we added that. And then we also manufacture a full line of vinyl windows in the later 90s. And it was one of those things, one of our major markets is with log home companies, and there's a lot of log home companies around, especially down in the Bitterroot Valley. And so, you know, we were also looking for other markets to get into, and with some of the downturn in housing and that, we're always looking at different things and market trends. And we had noticed, you know, and especially with John Freer with Riverworks work here with some of the green building things that the National Association of Home Builders was doing, and the LEED program that the U.S. Green Build Council was doing, there was a real trend in green building going on, and the values that embodied seemed to be perfect for what where we were positioned. And so it was just kind of dumb luck that we even got hooked up with that party at the governor's mansion. We had been working on a collaboration project with a log home supplier out of Fort Shaw, Montana, and selling windows and log packages into a big subdivision in Great Britain, of all places. And so I'd managed to score an invitation to this governor's party. And it turned out I couldn't go. So my salesman from Bozeman is a big fan of the governor's, and so he wanted to go. And so it was just kind of a dumb luck that we ended up crossing paths. And he called me up and said, you know, hey, you've got to check these people out. You know, they're right there in Missoula, which is a perfect fit for us. Because we've been manufacturing, you know, windows for a long time. We've got, at the height of the construction industry a few years ago, we had as many as 90 people on staff. Right now we're sitting about 50 people. But it just seemed to be a perfect natural fit for us, and it's been a great combination of a new kind of exciting, you know, entrepreneurial type oriented company. It's kind of allowed me to do some of the fun stuff that I like to do that are passions of mine with new product development. And this, I'm kind of hesitant to say this, I guess, but this product is sort of our first stab at this, and I really feel confident in saying that the next few are going to be even better, and so I'm really excited about that part of it. So anyway, I guess that's our part of the story.
I'd just like to tie in what's been going on tonight. It's pretty interesting because Clausen and North Slope partnered with the university in something called the UM Flats, which is a sustainable living experiment on 5th Street on one of those houses when you come across the bridge off of Arthur. It's going to be turned into a mini highway, and now they've retained those houses, and these guys have put in the windows. Clear Skies Climate Solutions is working with the university on many different fronts, and here we have, you know, St. Pat's, who is so involved with the community and the health of the students and everything. I'm a university professor, so I have to tie that all in. But thank you for coming tonight. Appreciate it.
So at this point, we're going to open the floor up for questions. You can talk to anybody, Phil, Beth, Keegan, Whitney, and Bill who joined us late.
One really quick note, I just saw Red's tow truck go by, so I don't know if anybody is, if that's a concern. Just a thought, I saw him tool by and he was going slow and looking, so.
Maybe you wanted to participate.
Possibly.
Do we have any questions? Yeah, go ahead.
When they did the study for the university, I don't know, because I don't remember if they had a baseline for what would be, where they would start with sustainability, you know, on campus, campus-wide sustainability. I know that's just one piece of it. So are there other pieces besides
Besides the greenhouse gas,
Right.
and carbon emissions? Yeah, there are. There's a lot of them. In fact, Lisa here just wrapped up a 2-day conference that she and another professor on campus, well, I thought I just saw that I didn't, got going. It's taken 2 years to get going, but the Green Thread Conference, and it was bringing together about 25 profs from all around campus. Lisa, like I said, is really the prime mover in this, but she worked with our committee to get the provost on board a year ago. It's modeled after programs around the country that have done this, but the whole idea is to get sustainability into disciplines, departments, and classes that might not normally, you might not normally associate it with, and keep spreading it across campus. And this was the first really focused and university-supported effort in that direction. But we are working on all kinds of educational components about sustainability, and there are a lot of other. There's been a recycling effort on campus for years. Like at St. Pat's, it's not where we want it to be. We're about 20 or 25% is our estimate. But it's funded primarily from associated students. They can check off and they funded. Now we've got a full-time recycling coordinator. And Jesse Davey worked really hard on that too. Students, it's just amazing the energy students bring and things they'll do. They've done a lot of, and some of our faculty, these dumpster dive things where they go out and take all the stuff out of a dumpster and then we put them out on the oval on campus to show people, look, you know, even with all this effort, everywhere you go on campus, there's something about recycling. We have it in the dorms and everything, and yet the dumpsters are full of stuff that could, even in Missoula, could be recycled and aren't. So there's all kinds of efforts going on that, but the one thing about the carbon emissions that I think it's really moved us forward, because at least it is only one component of a really larger kind of, you know, both for individuals and for organizations and for our culture, worldviews and ways of being. But because it's quantifiable, it seems to me that it really grabs people's attention. And because it's tied to this immediate threat that, you know, daily we are clarifying how immediate it is and how serious it is. So I think that the President Dennison signing on to this commitment, it helped us have a focus that, again, you know, numbers are something people like and they can quantify, and it's not 100% tied to energy usage or all kinds of sustainability, but it's pretty close. If you're reducing your carbon emissions, you're doing a lot of things right, and you're probably changing behaviors too. And that's another thing that we're trying to do on campus. That, besides operations, besides all sorts of things, we have to, you know, keep working on everyone's, you know, behavior, faculty, staff, students, and how they view what they do and how they think about their impact. So there is a wider effort, but, you know, I'd say it's still in its infancy. You know, that's the way I look at it.
Other questions?
Can I add one thing to that? Here in Montana, we're all sort of blessed with a mindset that's focused on the natural world. So in many ways, people that work on natural systems, forestry, I myself am a forester, we think that water integrates a landscape. So many people look at hydrology as the way that you can sort of take the temperature, so to speak, of what's happening across a watershed. Carbon is sort of a way that integrates human activity. Okay, so the sum cumulative total of all of our individual human behaviors is having an impact on the carbon cycle. And the carbon cycle, which is very key, is something that can be measured. So you can pick targets, you can monitor, you can set your baseline or learn your baseline, set targets, and measure how you're achieving relative to what your goals are. The word sustainability is fraught with misconceptions. What I think it means might be different than what you think it means, and so for the two of us to agree may be different than this, another person in the room. So the fact that you can actually measure and then act according to those, albeit quantifiable, figures about carbon is really important. And if you think about how carbon integrates what I do, what someone in Japan is doing, and what somebody in Tanzania at the moment is doing, all of us have an impact on our global carbon cycle. So it's really a useful metric, even though it's not handling water or solid waste, or it's not looking at the whole package, but it's integrating enough of human endeavor that it's very useful right now for us to work with.
I think the gentleman in the back had.
The window guy, what's the R factor for your nice tight range windows? How does it stand up against LA or some of the Scandinavian?
We are, right now, that's part of why I say that the best parts are yet to come, because what we've essentially done is integrated into our current clad product offering. So right now our best U value on an operating style window, an opening style window, is about an R3 at this stage, whereas we just had the test results done on a fixed set of windows that is, well, my math is typically my strong suit here, and I'm a little challenged. The window industry measures R factor. We actually report U factor. I have no idea why. I think it's because the numbers are so small that we felt it was better for our self-confidence if we reported the factors probably. Because the smaller the U factor, the better, so we felt better about that. But it's a little bit above an R5. So
highly competitive, that's great.
Yeah.
So it comes in at a U value of 0.18. And I just want to say something general about windows in the green building industry in particular. I have background working with a couple of different rating systems, the LEED rating system, and then also NAHB's green building program. And while these programs are not the be-all end-all, they're a benchmark for having a discussion of where things kind of fit into that framework. And one of the things when we came on board working with Clausen to develop a window that I noticed in investigating the window industry is that oftentimes energy performance is what leads, and that's really valuable because you want to have, that energy windows are the hardest part to make energy efficient. They're glass, but so that is what leads. But then what I would find happens is a lot of times people would either be sourcing them from perhaps Germany or Scandinavia or something to get some of this cutting edge high performance technology, and here then we end up shipping something across the ocean, or perhaps you use a product that isn't as environmentally friendly as it could be to be able to achieve that U value. So for me personally, I found it a little bit. And that's just how the green building industry is. You're going to take checks and balances, trade-offs to gain one benefit and perhaps sacrifice another. And I found in windows in particular that was a little frustrating. And that, for me, was one of the things that I thought was really a fantastic marriage of not only our values as two companies, but in how we want to move things forward. Being able to create a very good energy efficient window that meets Energy Star rating, exceeds Energy Star rating, but also utilizes the other things that I find are green building values, and frankly just in a lot of ways everyday Montana values, to source our materials locally and make things locally. Even our glass is regionally sourced out of the state of Washington, and so that type of thing, and then adding the sustainable forestry effort on top of that really kind of creates a nice trifecta for creating a good window product that can meet a lot of different needs. So,
That's cool.
Yeah.
It's like life cycle assessment of energy for the window.
yeah, exactly.
Go ahead, Nick.
Hi. So, Phil, Keegan, Whitney, and Bill. And Beth, I'll include you too.
Thank you.
It has to do with the trees, of wood. We usually think of commodities. We usually think of things. When I see something made out of wood, to me, it's a tree. It still has the spirit of the tree in it. Why am I bringing it up? Because what's been going on campus with the trees being chopped down really upsets me. And what I want, my heart wants to ask you a favor. My heart wants to ask you to please speak to the spirit of the trees that you are involved with, because there's a lot of sadness on campus. The trees are really sad, the land. And maybe I'm really sensitive and I can feel it. But I would like for more people to feel it, okay? Every time a tree is chopped down, I can feel it. It's really sad. Everything has a spirit. Each tree has a spirit. We each have a spirit. So I hope you'll do that favor for me to talk. You don't have to say it out loud. Just talk to the spirit of the tree. Talk to the larch, the floor, please. Because I want campus to be happier. Since that construction and tree cutting's been going on, campus is really sad.
I go with that. I think we should give thanks to every resource we use because it is a gift to our survival.
Amen. And I'll just say, I mean, I share some of your feelings about, make it real personal, a large maple right outside Jeanette Rankin Hall where I work, when they built the new Anderson Journalism Building, was taken out over objection. And, it's just a tree I was really familiar with for a long time. And there have been a lot of trees taken out, and, I can tell you, I have no control over that. There is a committee on campus that tried, the Arboretum Committee, since we are now a state arboretum. We thought that would give us a little more deliberation, and maybe it has. I'm not really privy to all those decisions, but I know other people on campus have been working to limit that. One of our profs, Vicki Watson, has at every opportunity tried to slow that down. Think this over more. There's also been trees damaged that weren't taken out for construction, but they were damaged in the process, their root areas, and so I think there are people on campus who share your view and your concern, and of course there's also a lot of building going on. It doesn't always get taken into account, is my impression.
And I'd like to speak to the times when it does get taken into account, because I think that this, the story, at least with the larch that we worked with for the Native American Studies building, is and I fundamentally agree, if it doesn't need to go, let's not have it be removed. But in this situation with where that site was located and the larch tree came out, I think one of the neat things that not only in incorporating it into the building, but is also the educational effort that will go along with that through recognition of that tree being removed from that site and being incorporated. And that's something that is documented and will be acknowledged in perpetuity, as long as they leave it hanging on the wall there. And I guess just to follow up with that, we've subsequently been consulted with about other projects on campus that may be happening where they said, well, if a tree needs to be removed, is it possible that we could use it in this building now? And that's been, I think, something that we've yet to see that come to fruition again, but that at least in the thought process of those who are that are working on the facilities management and building side of things there, that we're seeing it being carried over. The Native American Studies building was designed not only in the very first architect that worked on it is somebody who specializes in Native American architecture, which to me it seems obvious, but incorporates a lot of respect to how a building is built, how it's oriented, what goes into it, what the process is, and a very spiritual integration of the entire process. And it's also going through the LEED rating system process, which incidentally, there's a lot of aligned values. They may call them different things, but LEED also looks at how a building is oriented, how a site is developed, that type of thing. And so I think that project has been a real flagship for the university to learn and figure out how maybe they can do that in other ways. So on the other end of things, I feel like at least there's some response and respect to the process.
Other questions? Yeah, go ahead. Going in a little bit different direction, but we're covering all those bases. Given the state of the economy, and that all the industries that you're in have definitely seen their struggles with construction going down, rising cost of healthcare, budget cuts at the university. How is it impacting your ability to focus on sustainability since it's not a core business for most of you? And what challenges and opportunities are you seeing around that given this current context?
Who wants to go first?
I can start. I think, and it's sort of twofold. Our business, our entire existence, and the reason that Clear Sky exists is to try to bring awareness of climate change and sustainable business practices, really, because businesses are really the clients and the customers that are purchasing our offsets for the most part. And we're noticing that everybody's retracting a little bit, and most of our clients are very interested, still very motivated to think about it, not motivated to spend money that is on what I would sort of consider voluntary action, right? So in a non-compliance setting, the European Union has a compliance carbon market, Australia has a compliance market, California's got one. There are a number of compliance markets, Kyoto and the UN, but a lot of the climate market activity in the US is voluntary. And everybody is at the phase of, let's study and we'll think about acting. And I think that's true in most of sort of the triple bottom line businesses that are driven by values are still acting. But many people who are doing sustainable business practices and thinking about sort of, if it's not a core value, if it's more oriented towards PR or marketing or new product development, they're just waiting. And then lastly, I think everybody's paying slower. Right? So we invoice and we used to get paid, and now we invoice and we get a piece. And then you re-invoice and you get another piece. So that's definitely driving some changes in our growth plan.
I'd say it's affecting us too. It's true it hasn't been a core effort except in the ways that it saved money. Right. Until the last few years. The last few years we've been investing money in our abilities to mitigate our environmental impacts. But even in the ways that we save money, I have a stack of projects that I want to do, that the facilities wants to do, but they cost some money. And they will save us money. Sometimes the return is within a year. Sometimes it's within 2 years. That's pretty fast in terms of big capital investments. And those are on hold even. Everything basically except really direct care right now is pretty much on hold. I've in fact started a spin to save campaign. I'm not doing very well. Just because, long-term investment, and even short long-term, medium term, we need to keep doing those things that are going to help us out in the future. I also, would like to do something with Keegan, for instance, but that sort of thing is down the road enough for us that we're just not able to particularly. Though what I would like to say about that is there's also a real valuable time. With this recession and pulling back, the side of me that's not at work is kind of gratified to see that with this recession, look what's happened to our oil consumption globally. Mm-hmm. So behavior change, right? We've changed our behavior enough to affect our resource use. Terrific. I like to see that. I like to see that people are stepping back, taking a deep breath, reorienting a little bit. Do we really have to buy all this stuff? And so that is a similar theme a little bit at the hospital. And so what I think is really valuable right now is what Phil talked about a little bit, which is culture change. So that doesn't cost. It does cost time and energy. It costs investment of humans. And that's got a dollar price too in terms of salary. But that sort of work is it's crucial for the success of a project that's behavior driven. And, we're finding plenty of things to do this year that are based more on behavior change, culture change, no cost, low cost sort of interventions. So.
When we do these inventories, most of the low-hanging fruit with respect to reducing your offset also save money, and they're driven by people's actions. They're not really driven by capital investment. A fair number of them, not all of them. But
Yeah, I would just echo, just speaking for myself and not for the university at all, but I have so many conversations with students about the state of the world, and you talk about the environment, the natural living world that we depend on, we can last, 60 seconds without the air that we breathe. That's been in crisis, an increasing crisis, and the booming economy of the previous 10 years was just a mask, in my view, over that was masking much deeper problems. And, I don't think that whatever we conceive of as economy or business model of the second half of the 20th century, I think it's good that it is not thriving right now. I think it's good that I think long range, it's going to be, give us a possibility for changing on these deeper levels that will somehow make economy and ecology become integrated and have an economy that really works. So although, of course it's painful for a lot of people right now, and it's changing, short range how people are doing things, but I see students whose expectations are changing and their orientation about what they're going to do in the next, with their lives is changing, and I just have to believe that long range it's all to the good.
that's the first good spin I've heard that I believe in, actually. That's the first one. Interesting.
Go for it.
For us, our focus right now on developing something within the sustainability arena has been mostly focused on developing a product that we can sell to people who value sustainability. And so as people's attitudes and mores change, I see a real opportunity for us, and speaking as a business person, involved in a for-profit enterprise, that as those attitudes change and as technology within certain areas advance, especially as it relates to building and awareness of that, and that the prices go down to a point that they're attainable and reachable by most people. The technology isn't necessarily worth its salt until most people have access to it. And as those things start to happen, I see some real opportunities. And I know this downturn is going to be painful, and there's going to be companies that don't survive it. And if it gets bad enough, our company won't survive it. That's just, and people look at me and say, well, how can you say that and still have a smile on your face? It's like, well, just because I don't know. It's just one of those true statements, and by not saying it doesn't make it any less true. And so the fact is that you're either going to find out what you can do to help people meet their needs, and what they're willing to, the values they're willing to put into what they build. I see those things as all real positive trends. I tend to be much more optimistic by nature, but I do believe that those things are changing, and those values are changing, and the ability of certain parts of the market to deliver some of those things is there as well. So.
Can we go by one of your projects in town and see your windows installed correctly? Would you recommend a site or?
Yeah, there's quite a few. I'll sit here and think about it here for a second.
Well, and
But yeah.
while he thinks about it, I just want to kind of address a broader scale about the state of the building industry and green building in that. And, you know, the building industry has had a significant slowdown in some regions of Montana more than others. But in the projects that we are seeing people's interest in and projects that are moving forward are being built utilizing green building standards, and whether they go through a criteria that is a rating system like LEED or the NAHB residential program, even something that you don't call a name, but just say, hey, I want to build something that has good insulative value and a good U value and R value so that I'm not paying out the nose for my energy bills. So, you know, whatever you want to call it, it's all striving towards the same thing, which is better building that will help the environment, help people's wallets through the better built home that they have, and also the health piece, you know, utilizing products that are not toxic to your either immediate environment, or again, because we've talked so much about carbon, you know, that aren't contributing to bringing things from very far away, or utilizing things that are more local. So I think that within the building industry slowing down, a lot of folks are taking stock in what's closer around them, in making projects that make better sense for the long-term investment. And a lot of what that means is a good energy return, you know, getting a good return on creating a building that is going to have a good energy value, and being really thoughtful and not egregious in what they're just building and moving on from. And I think that's a positive of the kind of difficulties that we're all moving through in the building industry right now.
And one thing I guess I'd add to that too is, you know, just like in the downturn is, you know, with people having less money for consumption and those sorts of things, which has some other, maybe some good effects on some of that, and that forces each of us as individuals to reevaluate what we do as companies. It's forcing companies to look at what are the things that they do that truly add value to their products or services, and focus on those things and develop those things for the better for people. And I think ultimately it benefits the consumer. It's a painful, difficult process for people and markets to go through, but I also think that you short circuit those mechanisms at your peril too. I mean, you weaken some of those things by not allowing that sort of thing to happen, and that can get into all sorts of strange political discussion that we probably don't need. But anyway, that's my 2 cents, which is worth every penny you paid for it.
Do we have any other questions? Okay. I would like to have you join me in congratulating and thanking these folks for their wisdom, and congratulations on all the wonderful work you're doing. So. This is our last lecture for this current season. We will come back in the fall. We have a lecture or a panel discussion workshop every other month. September, November, January, March, and May. Watch our website, www.sbcmontana.org, for next year's schedule. Thanks for joining us tonight.